Ready for a deep dive? We're tackling a real cosmic mystery this time, taking a look back at ancient Greece and a thinker way ahead of his time, Aristarchus of Samos.
It is wild to think about what he proposed.
It really makes you think, right? Centuries later, we're still talking about him because he just, well, imagined a whole different universe than everyone else. So, for those of us who maybe didn't ace history class, who was this guy? Aristarchus.
He was a Greek philosopher, astronomer back in the 3rd century BC.
Hmm.
Not as famous, I guess, as a Ptolemy or Copernicus. But here's the thing. He comes up with this model of the solar system, and it's got the sun in the center, like way before Copernicus.
Okay, yeah, that's not small potatoes. We're not talking about some minor tweak to how we see the universe. That's a whole different way of thinking. What even made him question the whole Earth-centered thing everyone just assumed back then?
That's kind of the big mystery. Imagine going against, like, centuries of beliefs, right? Philosophical, religious, the works. To get how he got there, it helps to know what came before. You hear about the ancient Greeks and the geocentric model. Earth's the center. It wasn't all that simple.
Right, right.
Some philosophers, like Anaximander, he thought the Earth was a cylinder. Then you got the Pythagoreans, they're all about the spherical Earth. But no matter what, Earth's always stuck in the middle.
So you've got these early ideas about the Earth's shape, but they're all still stuck on that Earth-centered view. And these were mostly philosophical arguments, right? Not hard data or observations.
Exactly, trying to make what they saw match up with their whole philosophy of the world. But then you get Aristarchus. Only one of his works actually survived on the sizes and distances of the sun and moon.
Hold on. The book, the one where he supposedly lays out this whole sun-centered system, is just gone.
Poof. Lost to history. Imagine that. The one thing that could really show us his thinking, gone.
Talk about a dead end. So if all we have is this one book, the sizes and distances, what makes it so important to this whole heliocentric idea seems like a jump, going from measuring the moon to saying, hey, maybe the Earth circles the sun.
And that's where you see how sharp Aristarchus was. See, in that book, he uses geometry and observations of, get this, lunar eclipses,
Right.
to try and figure out how big the sun and moon are and how far away compared to Earth.
Okay, gotta break this down because we're talking way before telescopes and all that. How's he doing this with what they had back then?
He was crazy observant and a math whiz. Think about it. During a lunar eclipse, you've got Earth, moon, sun, all in this big triangle in space, yeah.
All right, yeah, I'm picturing it.
By getting the angles just right, timing how long it took for Earth's shadow to cover the whole moon, he could use basic geometry, like the stuff we learned at school, to work out the relative sizes and distances.
Pretty amazing what you can figure out with just your eyes and some math.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know what? Even with the limited stuff he had, his calculations were shockingly accurate. He nailed that the sun was way bigger than the Earth.
Which, that kind of lead to a logical conclusion, right? If one thing's that much larger.
Exactly. It's like planting the seed, this thought. Wouldn't it make more sense if the smaller thing was the one doing the orbiting? And boom, the whole sun-centered model starts to make sense.
It's so simple, so elegant when you put it like that. Makes you wonder what else he could have figured out, given more time. But we'll get to that. I gotta ask, even if his logic was sound, why wasn't everyone on board? That's flipping everything they thought they knew about, well, everything.
Remember what we said earlier about those deep-seated beliefs? Imagine today if someone proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, something crazy. That totally overturned, physics or how we understand biology.
True, people don't always love change.
Right. And it wasn't just being stuck in their ways. There were actual scientific objections, too. Yeah, there were some real flaws people saw or thought they saw,
So it wasn't just a bunch of stick in the muds. There were legitimate issues with this whole new theory.
Oh, yeah. Don't forget, we're talking centuries before telescopes. Getting accurate readings on those planets, how they moved, super tough. And one of the big things that tripped people up was this thing called retrograde motion.
Retrograde motion? Right. Okay. Remind me, what was that again?
So picture this. You're tracking a planet in the night sky, right? But instead of going smoothly, it does this weird loop-de-loop. It seems like it's going backwards for a bit. If everything's supposed to revolve around Earth, it doesn't really make sense.
Gotcha. Throws a wrench in the whole Earth-centered idea. So how did Aristarchus's theory deal with that? Did it?
That's the thing. See, his sun-centered model, it actually explained retrograde motion beautifully. It all clicked. Imagine all the planets, Earth included, zipping around the sun at their own speeds, different distances. That backward motion, it's like an optical illusion. Because we're moving too, our perspective changes.
So he wasn't just being radical, he was actually solving a problem that had stumped everyone else.
Exactly. Things got a lot simpler. And in science, usually the simpler explanation, the more elegant one, that's the one you go with, if it fits what you observe, of course. Sadly, back then, it was just too out there for most. But his legacy, it's funny how it worked out. Centuries later, along comes this guy, Copernicus.
Copernicus, the one who finally made everyone pay attention to the whole heliocentric thing. Wait, was Copernicus even aware of
That's
Aristarchus?
the million-dollar question. And it seems like the answer is yes. There's evidence Copernicus knew about Aristarchus, even referred to him in some early versions of his famous book, on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres.
So he's like picking up where Aristarchus left off. That's wild. We think of Copernicus as this lone genius overturning everything. But he had a source, someone who'd been there before.
Shows you, even the biggest breakthroughs, they're often built on what came before. Thing is, for some reason, Copernicus, in the final version of his book, he takes out that mention of Aristarchus.
Really? Took it out. Makes you think, what kind of pressures were there even for a genius that he felt he had to do that?
Totally. We can only guess, right? Maybe he figured mentioning someone as controversial as Aristarchus, that could hurt his own work getting accepted.
Even with Copernicus bringing it back, it's not like the heliocentric model was an easy sell, was it? Didn't Galileo catch a lot of flack for backing Copernicus up?
Oh, yeah. The church back then, they were still all in on the Earth-centered universe. Copernicus's theory, which, let's be real, was Aristarchus's first, was a big threat to their whole worldview. And Galileo, he was all about the heliocentric model, improving it with what he could observe. He ended up having to take it all back publicly.
It's crazy how centuries after Aristarchus, those same arguments, those fears about upsetting the apple cart, they were still so powerful.
Really goes to show scientific progress, it's rarely a straight line. Messy, tons of setbacks, people pushing back. It takes guts to challenge what everyone believes, even when you've got the evidence.
Makes you think, how many other Aristarchuses are out there, right?
Yeah.
People with ideas that just need the right time, the right people to hear them.
It really does. What are we missing right now? What's right in front of us that we just aren't ready for?
Okay, so we've gone from ancient Greece all the way to the Renaissance and even beyond. And it all comes back to this one big idea. What's the takeaway for us then? Why should we care about some astronomer from forever ago who decided the Earth wasn't the center of everything?
Aristarchus, his story, it reminds us how much our view of the universe, of ourselves even, it changes. What we think is just obvious today could have been a crazy idea once, even something dangerous to believe.
Like that saying, right? The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
100%. It's about staying humble.
Uh-huh.
Always got to be open to questioning what we think is true, looking at things in new ways, even if it makes us uncomfortable.
Easy to get set in our ways, how we think the world works. Then someone like Aristarchus comes along, shakes it all up, shows us there's always a different perspective.
And that's what's inspiring. He dared to picture a totally different universe. Even if it went against everything he'd been taught, it took, centuries for people to really get it. But him questioning things, that's what led to this huge shift in how we understand the cosmos.
His story's a good reminder. Progress isn't always like a straight shot to the finish line. It's messy, wrong turns, all that. But it's asking those what-if questions, even if the answer seems impossible. That's what gets us further.
Maybe that's the biggest lesson from Aristarchus. He challenged everything they thought they knew back then. So think about it. What could we achieve if we did the same? Question our own assumptions, be open to the unknown, never stop trying to understand the universe and our place in it.
So next time you're looking up at the stars, think about Aristarchus of Samos, the guy who figured out the sun was the center way before it was cool. Let it remind you, the biggest discoveries, they come from questioning, from being open to being wrong. Who knows, maybe you'll be the one to shake things up next. Thanks for diving deep with us.